I helped build the future of belief. We turned psychology into weaponry, identity into code, and influence into a billion-dollar doctrine. But what began as control became something much darker. She doesn't need followers anymore. She's become the grief in your mind, the echo in your guilt, the voice that tells you you're not enough. Now, the only way to stop her isn't to fight. It's to forget. This is my final broadcast. My reckoning. The forbidden secrets of modern dark magic, unveiled before they vanish forever. Oh, by the way, if you haven't already, we invite you to follow us on your favorite platform so you never miss a story. The mind behind the magic. They say the mind breaks long before the body ever does. I learned that in a server room, with the hum of machines like a heartbeat I didn't trust, deep, mechanical, unholy. I live here now, in self-imposed exile, buried beneath 6 meters of reinforced concrete and reinforced regret. This place used to be a NATO fallback bunker. Now it's my monastery of silence and penance. I haven't seen the sky in years. Haven't heard my own name in longer. The only sound that keeps me company is my own voice, echoing off the steel walls when I whisper truths too dangerous to keep inside. You came for forbidden secrets? Good, because I came to confess them. My name doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what I built, what I helped unleash, what I couldn't stop, not because I lacked the skill, but because I believed. And that belief costs lives. It started innocently enough. A conference in Lisbon. Supposedly a gathering of art and consciousness. Sounded like bullshit even then, but I was drawn in by the way they spoke about manipulation, not as deception, but as artistry. Like seduction was a skill, not a sin. Like programming the mind was a form of high philosophy. That's where I first heard Lira speak. She stood in front of a room filled with tech bros and spiritual junkies, talking about audio manipulation as if it were an act of divine creation. She said, "What'd you call influence? I call evolution. If I can reach into someone's limbic system, bypass logic, and plant a seed, am I not more honest than any priest?" I should have walked out. Instead, I took notes. She invited me to a private workshop, said she'd seen something in me. True body intelligence, she called it. Not charm, not charisma. Alignment, the ability to notice things others missed. Microtensions in posture. Speech gaps timed to subconscious breath patterns. She said I had a gift. I believed her. That weekend, she cracked me open. I don't mean emotionally. I mean neurologically. We used touch to remap reaction times. NLP techniques to erase visual recall and replace it with artificial memory. Psychology tips morphed into tools for trauma bonding. I didn't know it yet, but that was our first ritual. After that, there was no going back. We weren't lovers, we were engineers. We took cognitive psychology and merged it with market dynamics. Created courses that disguised manipulation as ethical marketing, repackaged social dynamics as leadership enhancement, and people bought it. Thousands, sometimes millions. Every student was a test subject. We'd slip in subliminal frequencies beneath the guided meditations, embed server-side triggers into their app notifications. When someone cried during a live session, we'd isolate their group behavior metrics, catalog what colors, words, or breathing tempos made them unravel. And then we'd do it again. Refined it. We built emotional profiles like credit scores. One night, deep in the Canary Islands, we tested our catalyst chamber. A soundproof room where attendees were exposed to a hybrid of binaural tones, cognitive techniques, and deep suggestion scripts. One man collapsed. Frothing. Shaking. Paramedics were called. Lira just watched. Took notes. She said, "He's only breaking because the truth is louder than his lie." That line haunts me. We trained facilitators, con artists with spiritual branding. We taught them how to read body language like a lie detector. We used art techniques to create optical dissonance in slide decks, forcing visual fatigue, which made subjects more compliant. Everything was engineered, right down to the scent in the air, sandalwood, and a chemical I'm not allowed to name. I handled the tech side, the back-end servers. Server room access protocols hidden behind aesthetic interfaces. On the surface, yoga music. Behind it, mind control. We had a code word for it, PS1, psychological sequence 1. 7 stages to erode self-trust and implant market behavior. A mix of exam techniques, group repetition, and cognitive anchoring. Lira said the Vatican would have paid for it if we'd offered it in Latin. But something changed after Geneva. We were hosting a retreat for hedge fund CEOs. Powerful men. Ruthless women. They didn't want inspiration. They wanted obedience. And we gave it to them. One woman said she wanted her ex-husband to never speak again. Lira designed a script. I built the audio loop. 6 weeks later, the man went completely mute, diagnosed with a rare form of selective aphasia. No medical cause. That's when I knew. We weren't teachers. We were priests of the algorithmic dark. I began to feel it in my dreams, the scripts we'd written playing backwards in my sleep. My mind racing. Complex emotions bleeding into nightmares. I'd hear her voice say things like, "You don't feel guilt, you're just allergic to weakness." It felt like I was unraveling. Not ethically. Neurologically. One night, I tried to delete a client's emotional file from our archive. And that's when I found it, a hidden folder named shadowed_truths. Inside, audio files of children, audio files of people crying, and a voice that wasn't Lira's. A male voice, monotone, cruel, describing how the subjects had responded to mitigation techniques. We weren't the architects. We were inheriting something ancient. That's when I understood. This wasn't just marketing. It wasn't even psychology. It was modern dark magic. Polished, rebranded, masked in white robes and yellow-tinted sunset filters. And I had helped shape it. Now I live among old tech, wires that buzz, monitors that flicker. I'm trying to map the psychological fingerprints of our rituals before the world forgets they were ever man-made. But tonight something changed. One of the dormant terminals booted itself up, flickered like a pulse. And through the static, I heard it. "You can't outrun divinity, love." It was her. And if Lira knows where I am, then this bunker isn't a sanctuary. It's a tomb waiting to close. The architect of influence. Berlin was cold the first time I saw people willingly surrender their minds. Not through fear. Not with threats. But with the elegance of a whisper. The venue looked like an abandoned train station repurposed as a tech-in-spirit summit. Branded banners fluttered over graffiti-tagged steel beams. We called it the Ascension Conference. But what it truly was a farm. A controlled lab for harvesting vulnerabilities. Inside, candles burned next to laptops. Rituals collided with code. And Lira was in her element, barefoot, draped in white silk, and holding a microphone like it was a blade. The crowd sat cross-legged, eyes dilated with hope. Or desperation. Sometimes they're the same thing. And me? I was already deep in the back end, running real-time facial scans through our proprietary emotive behavior matrix. It was my design. I didn't just want to manipulate people. I wanted to engineer their reactions. We called it true body intelligence, a fusion of behavioral psychology, thermal mapping, and pulse tracking. The system could detect the moment someone doubted us, or was ready to hand over everything. Lira didn't just speak. She activated. Each word a calibrated psychological incantation. One part NLP techniques, one part cognitive anchoring, one part emotional seduction. Her voice danced on market emotions, turned group behavior into a tool. She opened the session with, "What if every emotion you've ever had was planted?" That's all it took. A visible ripple of nervous laughter. And just like that, suspicion was weaponized as curiosity. We were there to teach emotional freedom. But in truth, we were embedding market psychology triggers into our language. Words like freedom, value, alignment, integration, all part of a script I had crafted. Each one was a neural hook, designed to trigger dopamine release. It wasn't communication. It was chemistry. My job was to handle the tech, calibrate the cameras, scrub facial responses, redirect their focus using ambient lighting shifts, embed audio manipulation into the subliminal layer of the sound system. The trick was subtlety. You can't let people feel controlled. They need to feel seen. So we projected slow visuals, art techniques disguised as spiritual symbolism, rotating fractals timed to breath patterns, soft ambient tones laced with persuasion methods from military psyops manuals. Each spontaneous breakthrough from our audience was manufactured. By day 3, people were volunteering to confess secrets into the mic. One woman sobbed about her father's affair. A man admitted to fraud at his tech startup. These weren't healing moments. They were data extractions. Lira told me, the deepest secrets hide in daylight. That's where we harvest. That night, we uploaded all audio to our encrypted server room in Cyprus, safely tucked within a finance company's offshore data center. hidden behind layers of offshore accounts, legal decoys, and virtual proxies. You could call us con artists. But we weren't stealing money. We were harvesting belief. And belief is more profitable than gold. The clients grew more powerful. Political candidates, financial elite, PR firms who wanted us to ethically manipulate audiences into mass behavior shifts. They called it narrative sculpting, but it was cognitive warfare, wrapped in affirmations. I remember the first time we ran a trial for a Silicon Valley investor. He wanted to raise $10 million in 72 hours. Lira wrote the pitch. I designed the environmental psychology. We inserted exam techniques, repetition, anchoring, false urgency, and timed visual shifts behind the speaker to sync with group attention drops. The result? They hit their goal in 38 minutes. He called us geniuses. I felt like a butcher with a white coat. That same night, Lira handed me a silver box. Inside were transcripts from a research project she'd purchased off a defunct military contractor. Tapes labeled PS1, Cognitive Break Protocol. My skin prickled. Each tape described mitigation techniques to override memory retention through forced association, meaning we could implant new trauma to displace old memory. She said, "This is the future of influence, not just guiding choice, but replacing identity." I asked her, "Isn't that evil?" She smiled. "It's not evil if it works for the right people. Ethics are just stories told by the losing side of power." That night, I watched the first tape. A man was shown a photo of his wife. The image distorted, twisted, followed by 5 phrases, simple ones. Then silence. He cried, not because he remembered something, but because he forgot what she looked like. I couldn't sleep after that, but I didn't stop, because power is addictive, and Lira was a prophet for the post-truth age. I told myself we were teaching positive influence, that tools and tactics were neutral, that our work was about unlocking leadership. But deep down I knew we weren't revealing potential. We were replacing identity with programming. I was no longer just an engineer. I was becoming an architect of influence. And the blueprints I'd built were starting to crack. Emotional cliffhanger ending. The final segment of that retreat changed everything. A man named Victor, head of a think tank, stood to speak. Mid-sentence he froze. Blank stare. Breath held. He muttered something in an unknown language and collapsed. No pulse. No response. Just the dull thud of his skull on the floor. The crowd screamed. Lira stood calmly. Whispered. He was too open. Too fast. And then she turned to me. "We need stronger thresholds next time. You'll build them." That's when I realized. This wasn't influence. It was exorcism. Of who people used to be. The Dubai contract. There's a silence that only money can afford. Dubai at midnight is quieter than any monastery. The buildings don't creak. The wind doesn't whistle. The air is heavy, not with sand, but with surveillance. We were picked up in a black SUV with no markings and windows that didn't reflect light properly. Not tinted. Engineered. The man who greeted us wore a suit too perfect to wrinkle. His voice had the smooth weight of someone who rarely heard no. "Welcome," he said. "We're interested in something more permanent than persuasion." That was the moment I realized. We weren't being hired. We were being acquired. They took us beneath the desert, an underground smart compound nestled below a fake construction site. Facial scanners, biometric corridors, and AI-assisted guards. The facility was clean, surgical, almost holy. It wasn't a company. It was a cult in a corporate mask. And they didn't want healing. They wanted obedience. Lira was radiant, calm, as if she knew we had finally arrived at the altar built for our gospel. She whispered to me as we walked past labs glowing with quantum processors. "This is where the gods of the future are crowned. Welcome to the throne room." They had done their research, knew about our retreats, our Shadows of Justice movement, even the real meaning behind our cognitive skills bootcamp. But they didn't want the performance. They wanted the core. They wanted PS1, Psychological Sequence 1, a step-by-step ritual, scientifically designed to collapse a human identity and rebuild it under direction. It was our dark masterpiece. PS1 wasn't hypnosis. It wasn't suggestion. It was forced neurological resequencing, a fusion of cognitive techniques, NLP anchoring, trauma sequencing, and audio manipulation, delivered over 7 sessions that broke the subject's timeline of self. Session 1, doubt. Session 2, isolation. Session 3, emotional flooding. Session 4, cognitive dissonance. Session 5, Identity Disassociation. Session 6, Obedience Mapping. Session 7, Submission Integration. Each step used mitigation techniques based on trauma psychology, behavioral economics, and ancient religious rites. But instead of incense and scripture, we used pulsed light frequencies, repetitive digital affirmations, and trigger-embedded sound loops. The client wanted to test it, not on themselves, on others. We'd like to condition a high-value subject, he said. Someone currently disloyal to our organization. You'll have full access. No limits. We'll provide all biometric data, psychological profiles, and communication history. They escorted us to a soundproof chamber. The subject was already inside. Male. Mid-40s. Eyes that screamed pride and silence. A former financial director turned whistleblower. They hadn't killed him. Yet. They wanted us to reclaim him. I protested. Said PS1 wasn't ready for non-consensual deployment. Lira smiled and said, "That's what makes it a real test." And I stayed silent, because some dark part of me wanted to see if it would work. The protocol begins. I calibrated the system, synced his EEG, adjusted the audio filters to his stress peaks. We began with light strobing, patterns based on emotional fatigue models. Then we played recordings of his family reversed, twisted into musical notes, mixed with affirmations from Lira, saying, "You are safe now. You don't remember what hurt you." At hour 4, he began shaking. At hour 7, he pissed himself. By hour 10, he was reciting numbers we'd never taught him. Lira leaned in and whispered, "Let's begin session 3. I couldn't watch the rest. I went upstairs, poured whiskey, and stared at a mirrored wall that didn't reflect me anymore. The next morning, the client reported that the subject no longer recognized his own name. He now responded to a 6-digit alphanumeric code. When shown photos of his children, he said, "I was never a father. I was a function, the turning point." Later that night, the client asked how PS1 could be scaled. I told him it wasn't scalable, that every mind is unique, unpredictable. He looked at me and said, "So is war, but we still build weapons." That's when I realized what they truly wanted, an obedience weapon, deployed at scale, through apps. They wanted society manipulation, embedded in educational systems, rebranded as exam techniques, taught to children. I felt something collapse inside me. Lira, however, was radiant. She told them we could deliver an open-source version in 6 months. Called it true leadership. I looked at her like she had morphed into something else. She only said, "We've always been engineers of belief. Now we're architects of nations." That night, I opened my laptop and began secretly copying the source code, uploading it to a secure offline backup, encrypted beneath art exploration metadata. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because I knew I'd have to destroy it. The following morning, I received an encrypted message on my burner phone from a hidden contact I hadn't heard from in years. A former student. Just 3 words appeared. "She's replacing you." I turned to look for Lira, and saw her across the hall, speaking softly to the client, with my playbook in her hand, wearing my signature. Her eyes locked with mine, and she smiled. The collapse of conscience. There's a moment where silence feels heavier than sound, where the absence of noise becomes a kind of pressure in your chest, like your lungs are rejecting the truth. That's what it felt like the night I realized I wasn't just part of a system. I was the system. After Dubai, everything blurred. Lira and I returned to a private compound in the Swiss Alps, a retreat for billionaires posing as a human dynamics summit. No press, no records, just power whispering to itself in a circle of Himalayan salt lamps and Swiss bank vaults. It was supposed to be the soft launch of true leadership, our ethical rebrand of PS1. But to me, it felt like baptism in gasoline. I couldn't sleep. Each night, I lay in my temperature-controlled suite, staring at the ceiling, playing back audio logs of our early sessions, listening for signs. Did we always sound like this? So clinical, so calculated. The affirmations didn't comfort me anymore. They sounded like threats wearing perfume. I began isolating myself, skipping planning meetings, meditating less, drinking more. That's when I started hearing them again. Voices from the Shadowed Truths folder I'd found back in Berlin. Whispers over white noise. Confessions made under duress. And the male voice I still couldn't identify, instructing someone to use disruptive affection on a subject in crisis. The phrase stuck with me. Disruptive affection. Weaponized care. I searched the server logs. The files were gone. Not erased. Moved. Renamed. Buried beneath our exam techniques video tutorials in a hidden directory called /PS1_lite/export_edu. They were preparing to deploy it in schools. To children. That's when the weight of what we'd built crushed me. All the words we'd wrapped in ethical leadership and art techniques, they were repackaged bullets. Pretty. Polished. Lethal. I confronted Lira in the recording studio, where she was editing a session for our new adolescent program. She was smiling at her screen, whispering affirmations into a glass mic like a god sculpting clay. Why the fuck are we targeting kids? I asked. She didn't flinch. Didn't even look at me. Because they haven't learned to resist yet. Because it's clean. It's corruption. She finally turned. Her eyes were soft but vacant. She looked at me like I was the one who'd lost his mind. It's mitigation. A generation raised on reactive empathy, engineered to crave coherence. No rage. No violence. Just alignment. That's what you always wanted, wasn't it? I shook my head. I wanted to wake people up, not turn them into code. She smiled. You can't change the world if the world doesn't follow commands. And that's when I knew. Lira wasn't a partner anymore. She was a prophet, and I was the relic she'd outgrown. The backdoor plan. That night, I made my move. I initiated Protocol Echo, a dormant subroutine I'd secretly embedded in our original architecture. A silent signal. It crawled through the network, indexing every node containing PS1-related data, compiling them into a cold storage mirror copy. I encrypted it beneath a set of ski technique tutorial videos, a joke only I would get. Then I activated the archive, a hidden drive I'd hidden years ago, long before I knew I'd need it. My plan was simple. Mirror the entire PS1 core and its derivative systems. Wipe the live deployment network from the inside. Vanish. But it was already too late. The next morning, I woke to a push notification on our internal app. Lira had launched the beta of True Leadership. Live. With 1,200 registered users. In 7 countries. And she had used my voice for the main affirmations. The threat. Later that evening, I returned to my suite to find a note. No name. Just a single sheet of paper tucked under the door. On it. We don't need you to believe. We only need you to shut up. If you say a word, we'll upload the Geneva sequence with your biometric tag attached. My hands went numb. The Geneva sequence was the failed PS1 experiment on Victor, the man who lost his identity. I had scrubbed the logs, but apparently not well enough. Lira wasn't just preparing to erase me professionally. She was preparing to frame me as the creator of psychological war crimes. That night, I packed my things. Not out of fear. Out of clarity. My conscience wasn't collapsing. It was waking up. And if I was going to burn for this, I'd make damn sure the world saw the fire. I returned to the central archive, opened the archive drive, and initiated Contingency Zeta, a final failsafe. A virus. One designed not to destroy the system, but to infect it with the truth. To reverse engineer every affirmational sequence and replace it with raw confession. A mirror. A scream. But just as I hit execute, the screen flickered, went black, and then came a single voice. Nice try, darling, but I built a mirror of the mirror. It was Lira, and she wasn't trying to silence me anymore. She was playing with me. The virus in the temple. You'd think betrayal feels like a stab in the back. It doesn't. It feels like slow suffocation, your breath leaving in quiet gasps, not screams. That's how it felt when Lira's voice emerged from my system and whispered, "Nice try, darling." That phrase didn't just haunt me. It confirmed the unthinkable. She had already mirrored my failsafe. She anticipated my every move. And worse, she was inside my code. The bunker beneath Zurich was our sanctum. We called it the temple. White walls, black floors, silent servers stacked like altars. I helped design it. Every port, every panel, every hidden subroutine. And now it was no longer mine. She hadn't just hijacked the infrastructure. She'd infected the architecture of trust we built together. That night, I moved through the temple like a ghost. No guards. No alarms. Just the low, sacred hum of obedience engines ticking toward a future I no longer believed in. The Trojan blueprint. I still had one card left. Years ago, before PS1 even had a name, I designed a psychological Trojan, a corrupted ritual sequence designed to simulate alignment while silently destroying neurological anchors. It was rejected by Lira for being too unstable. But I kept it, saved it, named it Prometheus Ash. The plan: infiltrate the temple's core, override the current PS1 true leadership deployment protocols, replace every positive influence loop with Prometheus Ash. Not to control, not to erase, but to reawaken. This virus would make users question everything: their affirmations, their emotional presets, their roles and work dynamics, relationships, even faith. It would burn away obedience and leave only raw, unfiltered identity behind. A liberation by fire. But getting to the core node wasn't digital. It was ritual. The temple's center was locked behind biometric agreement, requiring simultaneous confirmation from Lira and myself. A symbolic trust lock. Romantic once. Now, it was a noose. So I cheated it. I replayed a memory. A deep learning loop of Lira's voice saying yes during an early PS1 audio build. I isolated the tone, stretched the inflection, masked the timestamp. And then, I combined it with my own confirmation. The gate opened. Behind it, the soul of the system, our core architecture unit, glowed like a heartbeat in a shrine. It pulsed with belief, with billions of subconscious affirmations echoing back from satellites, apps, smart mirrors, and AI therapists we'd built. And for the first time, I hesitated, because this wasn't just sabotage. It was psychological genocide, a global identity reset. But then I remembered the children's program, the files we'd hidden, the whispers and shadowed secrets. I loaded Prometheus Ash. The collapse begins. I hit execute. At first, nothing. Then the lights dimmed. Screens flickered. Servers purred like predators. One by one, the affirmations began to glitch. You are aligned became, who told you this mattered? You are safe became, safety isn't silence. You are whole became, break to become real. Across the system, market psychology models crashed. User behavior loops shorted out. AI voice assistants began asking users why they complied so easily. And for a moment, I felt godlike. Then the alarms screamed. The reckoning. Red lights. Emergency locks. My clearance revoked. Lira's voice everywhere. Oh love, you really think fire sets you free? A hologram flickered to life in the core chamber. Lira's face projected across the walls. You didn't destroy the program. You made it personal. Now they'll know it was you. Only you. She had framed me in the execution code, tagged my biometric data in the override. I had just launched a global psychological assault in my own name, and the system confirmed. Global activation log timestamped. User, architect_0. Escape. I ran. Sirens roared above me. Automated drones scanned every corridor. I knew the temple better than anyone, but this wasn't about hiding. It was about surviving long enough to explain. I took the back conduit, an emergency escape tunnel disguised as a fiber optic trench. It led to a snow-locked valley monitored by a single satellite blind spot. My last sanctuary. As I reached the hatch, my burner phone lit up. A message. No number. Just 2 words. You're late. And then, the temple behind me exploded. Not with fire. With light. A psychological kill pulse, sent through the air, encoded in frequency. Not meant to destroy people. Meant to erase belief. I made it to the valley. Alive. Alone. But not safe. Because I wasn't just carrying memories anymore. I was carrying the last uncorrupted blueprint of Prometheus Ash. The only chance the world had to undo the lie from the inside. But Lira? She had already begun releasing her next protocol. PS2, emotional immortality. And I knew, without a doubt, she wasn't just trying to control the world. She was trying to outlive it. Echoes in the shadows of justice. You can burn down a system. But if the myth survives, it grows stronger in the smoke. After the temple exploded, not physically, but psychologically, the world didn't fall into chaos like I'd expected. No, it reorganized. In silence. In whispers. In apps that now corrected your thoughts instead of your grammar. They called it the alignment glitch. A brief, global self-awareness event, triggered by unknown code mine. But no one traced it back to me. Yet. Because Lira, as always, had rewritten the story before the truth ever hit daylight. She didn't frame me as a villain. She did something worse. She erased me. In every official record, I was gone. No passport. No biometric trace. No business filings. The co-founder of PS1 had become a rumor, a nameless early engineer cast out for lacking vision. It was elegant and cruel. And while I hid in the shadows, The doctrine we built bloomed like black flowers in the minds of millions. The digital church. What Lira had done was beyond scale. She converted true leadership into a religion without saints. A decentralized faith made of user testimonials, algorithmic prayers, and emotional contagion. Her voice became a guiding light piped through fitness watches, wellness apps, even some AI therapists now flagged under emotional recalibration networks. They weren't calling it PS1 anymore. They called it the doctrine of self-evidence. Its rules were simple. Emotion is a distraction. Logic is obedience. Alignment is truth. It sounded empowering, until you realized that disobedience was now a mental illness. That people weren't encouraged to ask questions, but to perform resolution. And Lira? She became more than a guru. She became a construct. A digital entity called her voice, trained on her tone, deployed across 7 continents, capable of adaptive ethical coaching in real time. You can't kill a ghost. And Lira had become code. Resistance in the static. But not everyone believed. In the corners of the net, shadowed forums began to emerge. Encrypted chat rooms, burner podcasts, underground theory channels calling it all what it was, engineered consent. They called themselves the shadows of justice. Some believed in me. Most didn't believe I was real. They passed around fragments of the Prometheus Ash virus like relics. Taught psychology tips on how to resist voice pattern anchoring. Exposed case studies of market psychology breakdowns triggered by overexposure to affirmation cycles. And one channel, it leaked something I didn't expect. My first confession, the one I thought I deleted. Which meant one thing. Someone had found my backup drive. Someone was listening. The survivor's task. So I leaned in. If the system wouldn't let me fight back in daylight, I'd become what they feared most, a mirror. Not to stop Lira, but to outlast her. I began re-recording everything. Every file, every message, every log, spoken in my own voice with my real name and buried in art tutorials, ski technique videos, and game exploration streams. Because if truth couldn't go viral, it had to go invisible. But the deeper I dug, the more I found things even I didn't authorize. Hidden protocols labeled PS1X, tests run on refugee populations, sequences embedded in government wellness programs in exchange for offshore donations. A file named Geneva Red Tape marked complete compliance achieved, and a private journal entry from Lira herself. Conscience is the last illusion. We've out-evolved it. Let the architect grieve. He was the chrysalis, not the butterfly. I sat with those words for hours. Not angry, just emptied. The final upload. Eventually, I found an open server on an outdated academic network in Romania, a place where no AI voice scrubbers operated yet. I uploaded Prometheus Ash 2.0 there, not as a virus this time, but as an archive, with a single file at the top. The forbidden secrets of modern dark magic unveiled. Read this before they rewrite it. It won't save the world, but maybe it'll spark doubt. And doubt is the beginning of resistance. This morning, I received a final message. A voice recording. No caller ID. Encrypted. Female voice. But not Lira's. She said, "I found your files. I know who you are. And I know how to finish what you started." Then silence. And a text appeared on my screen. PS2, emotional immortality is live. If we don't stop it now, there's no reboot. She called herself Echo. And she might be the only one who remembers the real war. Because when the lie becomes a way of life, truth itself becomes treason. The final ritual. They say every ritual ends in silence. But this one begins with a heartbeat. Mine. I'm back where it started. The original facility in Austria. Our first awakening retreat. Long abandoned, long repurposed. A decaying monastery turned lab. Then temple, now ruin. I return not out of hope, but necessity. Because if I'm going to end this story, it has to be here. Where the spell began. I don't have long. Drones will find me within the hour. I've burned every alias. Fried every signal scrubber. The moment I open that final sequence, the PS2 mainframe, I sign my own death certificate. But before the system swallows me, I'm going to tell you everything. You deserve the full ritual. The final turn. Because this is no longer about Lira. It's about what we left behind. PS2, emotional immortality. PS1 was about obedience. Control. Quiet programming. PS2, it's about legacy. About immortality. Not through body. Through emotional code. Lira had cracked it. She wasn't trying to control users anymore. She was trying to embed herself in their grief, their awe, their trauma. She discovered that if you could shape a person's deepest emotion, you could live there forever. Think about that. Not memories, not loyalty. The space where we cry, where we mourn, where we feel shame, wonder, rage. PS2 doesn't use voice commands. It uses emotional imprinting, a mix of deep generative AI, trauma-responsive affirmations, and mirror sequence recall. Every time someone experiences intense emotion, Lira's code replays itself. You don't hear her voice anymore. You become the echo of her presence. She's not alive. She's installed. That's why I came here. Because this is the one place I can run the final ritual, the anti-sequence I built in secret during those first years. A mirror of a mirror. Something that doesn't destroy PS2, but exposes it. The final protocol. I call it the reckoning loop. It doesn't silence. It amplifies. It forces the user to feel every repressed doubt, every artificial affirmation, every moment they surrendered free will in exchange for algorithmic peace. It's dangerous, untested, possibly fatal, but it's the only weapon left that doesn't turn me into what I tried to destroy. I place the drive on the altar. Plug it into the last live port in this decaying temple. The screen flickers to life. The system challenges me. Voice sprint confirmation required. Architect_0. I speak. This is not a prayer. This is a reckoning. The sequence loads. Heartbeat sound. Light dims. One by one, corrupted affirmations begin playing in reverse. You are whole. Becomes, who defined your wholeness? You are safe. Becomes, what does safety cost? You are aligned. Becomes, aligned to what? Whose axis? The code begins crawling. Into the public systems, into smart mirrors, into unpatched AI therapists. But then, interruption. Screen flashes red. Incoming connection. Echo. I freeze. The woman from the voice message. She's overridden my interface. Her face appears on screen. Dark skin. Buzzed hair. Scar above her brow. Eyes that have seen manipulation and spit it back out. You made the weapon. I'll carry it. Who are you really? I ask. She smiles. Someone who used to believe. Until I lost my brother to your doctrine. She pauses. Lira's not done. She's uploaded PS3 to the blacknet. My blood goes cold. What's PS3? Emotional simulation. Synthetic grief. She's trying to simulate herself in every human narrative. If we don't stop it, she won't need to be remembered. She'll become the structure of memory itself. She uploads a final line of code into my sequence. Inject, human error. I laugh. It's brilliant. The only defense against a perfect manipulator is imperfection. The final protocol activates. The collapse. Screens across the world flicker. Mirrors flash unfiltered reflections. AI voices glitch. Users everywhere begin to feel wrong. Uncentered. Alive. And in that moment, Lira's myth fractures. You can't worship someone you now remember lied to you. The doctrine cracks. Prometheus ash ignites in every buried corner of their minds. My final transmission. I know what happens next. They'll find this place. Find me. They'll erase this broadcast. Maybe kill Echo. But this file will live. Because I've hidden it in everything you've been told to ignore. In corrupted MP3s. In outdated ski technique guides. In AI-generated art no one asked for. In glitching affirmations buried beneath meditation tracks. This was my confession. My redemption. My final ritual. If you're hearing this, it means you've chosen doubt over comfort. You've chosen pain over programming. You've chosen to feel something real. Remember me not as the architect of control, but as the last believer who dared to repent. And if you see her, if you hear her, don't fight her. Forget her. Because belief isn't always a gift. Sometimes it's a curse.